Yeah, Chimo, everybody. We just getting set up. Got a couple of things I want to bring up, and we're just waiting for some people to come in. So just give me about 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll be straight. And if anybody has any issues with the images or the sound, just let me know, and then we can straighten it out. So we're gonna get started around maybe like 8:07. Just give me 1 second. Okay, your GMO. So, of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room at any point during the presentation. Okay, just give me 1 more minute. I want to make sure people can still get in. We're trying to get in right now. Okay, so GMO greetings, Yedase. We thank you, everyone, for tuning into this special live. So what we wanted to do is go over the Akan New Year in North America. So on our page, and this is something, first of all, for those who are unaware, I'm Odwirafo, Kwesi, Radnehmpata, Akan, Odwirafo of Aakhuamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, the Aakhuamu Nation in North America within Odwiraman, the purified nation, Afuraitkait people, and we use Odwiraman, the purified Odwirafoman nation for Afuraitkait people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So, okay. Mic went out for a second. Okay, so what we started doing back in 12,991, which is 1991, we established our Odwira celebration, our New Year observance. So we have a page on our website, the Odwirafo.com website, and it has a couple of things on it that says Apo and OBRADWIRA. So let's check that out first. The first part is talking about our Apo observance. And that takes place during around the time of the spring equinox in March, the 13-day observance, and so forth. And then we have, scroll down past that, that's the Apo Afashe. But what we want to get to tonight is the OBRADWIRA Nananomsom. So we practice Akan ancestral religion. First and foremost, we don't just choose an ethnic group and so forth. Let me pull this up real quick. So when we learn about our ancestral inheritance, we learn that directly from what we call our Nananomsom, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. Our people did not stop speaking to us when we were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Mbusua Kesie, which is an Akan term that we utilize for the great perversity, the enslavement era. They did not stop speaking with us. They continued to communicate with us. The same forces in nature, the same abosom, the forces in nature that are connected to our spirit genetic blood circles that we are born into the world with. We carried these abosom with us in our blood circles into the Western Hemisphere. So we never stopped communicating with our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors over these hundreds of years being in the Western Hemisphere. We never stopped communicating and being communicated with or being possessed by spirit possession by the forces in nature that are assigned to us before we even enter into the womb. So no one can assign an abosom and orisha voodoo to you or give them to you by performing a ceremony and giving you a shrine and so forth. That shrine is a vehicle by which you can communicate and establish a space to communicate in an effective manner with the abosom that governs you. But the divinity that governs you governs your head as well as your patriclan and matriclan, abosom or orisha or voodoo and so forth. Those are assigned to you pre-incarnation by Nyamewa, Nyame, the Great Mother and Great Father Supreme Being. No matter what their names are in various traditions of Afuraitkait people, African Black people, we are assigned, our spirits are assigned specific abosom, specific orisha, specific voodoo pre-incarnation. Then we are sent into the womb with those abosom already attached to us. The divinity that governs the head, as well as the patriclan divinity, the patriclan abosom, ejabosom as we call it in Akan, or bosom, and the matriclan abosom, the abusi abosom as we call it in Akan. So we never stop communicating with the great mother, great father, supreme being, who never stopped communicating with the Nananomsom. They never stopped possessing us, guiding us, showing us how to procure medicine from plant life and animal life and mineral life and so forth. Our Nananomsom, for our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, never stopped communicating with us. So when we're forced into the Western Hemisphere, we continue to practice our culture. It is those of us who maintained our ancestral religious practices that were focused enough and disciplined enough to escape from plantations, kill the white slave owners and so forth, so-called slave owners and so forth, establish independent settlements, independent maroon settlements, nations and so forth, and maintain our sovereignty throughout the rest of the enslavement era. And we forced the end of the enslavement era by the Gullah Wars, for example, which led to the Civil War and everything else. And those who maintained ancestral religious practices continued that process after the enslavement era by establishing independent Black towns. So there were hundreds of independent Black towns, people who maintained ancestral religious practices. Those are the ones who were effective in establishing independent Black towns that lasted for the next 100+ years. Some of them still exist today. So we come from that blood circle, that blood circulage or so-called lineage. Now, when it comes to the new year, first of all, let's go to something really quick. We posted this on our Instagram page, and a couple of months ago, or actually last month. Just pull this up right quick. It's not letting me. I want to show something on the Coptic calendar real quick, just because today is September 11th, and it is actually the first day of the Coptic New Year and so forth. So let me just pull this up. And some of you may have seen this post, but we posted this in August because of the misinformation that was being propagated regarding the so-called Lionsgate, but it also gives some insight into, what's going on. Okay, so we posted this information because, people over the past, couple of decades, Europeans put forth this false notion that there's a Lionsgate on August 8th. We put forth the proper information that, number one, August is not the 8th month of the year. In the Gregorian calendar, it's the 8th month, but that's a false calendar. There's no sacred cycle that begins in August and so forth at that particular time on what they would consider August 1st. That is not the 8th month of the year in any natural cycle calendar. And that 8th day of that 8th Gregorian month is not actually an 8th day of any cycle, lunar cycle, solar cycle, stellar cycle, and so forth. Moreover, in the actual calendar, the actual astronomical calendar, and of course our people established what is called astrology and so forth, July 21st through April 21st is not the sign of Leo. The sun doesn't move into the constellation of Afuraitkait until August 10th. So prior to that, at August 8th, the sun is not in the sign of Leo, so it's not in the sign of the lion and so forth. So that's number one. Number two, it is not the 8th month. Number three, it's not the 8th day. So this pseudo holiday about the Lionsgate and the energy of the lion and 8/8 and the sacred numbers, pure foolishness. It has no basis in reality at all. It's nonsense. It's only been happening over the past 20 years because some cracker came up with this. There was an eclipse back in the late 90s on 8/8, and they decided to make this some pseudo spiritual metaphysical day. Some of our people jumped on board and so forth and started having these, Lionsgate ceremonies and Lionsgate t-shirts and Lionsgate, crystal packs that they're going to sell people and Lionsgate smoothies and all kind of nonsense. But it has nothing to do with anything real. So we brought that information out, but we also put forth the actual Coptic calendar. Now, the first day of the Coptic calendar, the first day of the Coptic New Year, is actually the Gregorian date of September 11th, which is today. This is New Year's Day in the Coptic calendar. The Coptic calendar is the survival of the ancient Kemetic, so-called Kemetic misnomer Egyptian civil calendar, which is 3 seasons, 3 weeks. There are 3 10-day weeks and so forth for each month. There are 12 months plus an intercalary month of 5 days, 12 months of 30 days and so forth. There are 3 seasons and so forth. So, but it starts on the first day of Tahuti, but that first day of Tahuti in the Gregorian calendar is September 11th. So today is the first day in the Coptic calendar, and Coptic simply means that's the title that they use for the ancient Kemetic language. When it came into usage, the late period version of the language came into usage about 2,000 years ago. They started calling it Coptic. There are different dialects of Coptic and so forth, so they call it the Coptic calendar. But today is New Year's Day for the Coptic calendar. The same thing for the Ethiopian Orthodox calendar. Today is the first day of the new year for them. Now, as you can see here, the first day of Tot, that's how it's pronounced in Coptic. Now, previously that's Tahut or Tahuti or Tehuti and so forth. That's the first day of the year and the first month. Then the second month begins on what the Gregorian calendar is, October 11th. Then the month of Het Heru, which becomes Hathor in Coptic and so forth, November 10th, Kohayak, December 10th, and you go through the different months. And then by the time you get to August 7th, which is Mesut Ra, now it's called Mesori in Coptic, but Mesut Ra, that is the 12th month of the year. August 7th in the Gregorian calendar is the first day of the 12th month of the year. August 8th in the Gregorian calendar is the second day of the 12th month of the year. So it's not 8/8, it's actually 12/2 in reality. Only Europeans naming these months after themselves, Augustus, Caesar, and Julius for July, and all this other nonsense. That's a fake calendar. Now, and make sure your sound is muted so there's no background. Anybody who joins up. So, and then this is the calendar. You see the 12 cycles here on the ceiling of the tomb of Senenmut in ancient Kemet. So we just wanted to show that those 12 cycles of 30 days of the civil calendar go back previous to the Greeks, previous to the so-called Babylonians and so forth, when they try to say that the Babylonians created astrology and the people of Kemet learned it from the Babylonians and so forth. Total misinformation. So we just wanted to point that out. Let me go back up. Just to give further context to that. In our article on the Achinegwa, the sacred animal totems, original zodiac signs in Kemet, we show the actual original animal totems from which the White Snarl Spring took, and some of them they changed for their quote-unquote zodiac. These are deities and sacred animal totems for these specific divinities that go back thousands of years previous to the existence of Europeans on Earth. Eurasians, Asians, Europeans, Eurasians on Earth. The great ram of the north is Bane-Jeret. They made that ram Aries and so forth. The great bull, Ptah-Men, became the bull of Taurus. The twins, Shu and Tefnut, male and female divinities and so forth, expansive and contractive energy and so forth, fire and water and so forth. They made them the twins, Castor and Pollux, and made them two males. Khepra, who was using his hind legs as the great beetle and so forth to push the Aten, the sun, across the sky, the Aten Atenit. They changed that into the crab that walks backwards and sideways and so forth. They changed that into Cancer, but originally it was Khepra and so forth. We have Heru-Bedeti, the so-called Shesep and Ankh, which became corrupted into the Sphinx. But that's the great form of Heru-Behudet, or Heru-Bedeti, in the form of the sacred line. When we went to Kemet, and when we go to Kemet this coming May, and we go to the temple of Edfu, the sacred temple of Heru-Behudet and so forth, you will see the form that Heru-Behudet takes the form of a lion. Of course, it takes the form of the sacred falcon, and sometimes the form of a man with the head of a falcon and so forth, but his sacred animal totem. He's waging war against the followers of Set and so forth. Heru-Bedeti, the son of Ra, along with Heru, son of Alsar and Set, they together are fighting against the enemies of Ra in the form of sacred lions. So this is one of the reasons why that lion totem exists. So, hold on, give me 1 second, real quick. Okay, so this is Aset. You will see this particular image of Aset in the temple of Seti and Abju and Abydos when we go to Kemet in May. And those of you, we still have space, you can register for that. That's Aset, of course, the virgin, so-called Virgo. We have Ma'at. And of course, we talk about the male deity Ma'al, which we will get into a little bit later tonight. She's the one who balances the scales. She governs the scales and so forth, the scales of balance. This is where they get Libra from. Serket, the scorpion, female divinity, that's a sacred animal totem. This is where they get Scorpio from. The 13th sign, there are 13 constellations that cross the ecliptic. That's why there are 13 signs. Because of the precession of the equinoxes and the shift of the earth and so forth, a couple of thousand years ago, there were only 12 constellations crossing the ecliptic, which is the Earth's pathway around the sun. But because of the shift of Earth moves like a gyroscope and so forth, because of the shift of the Earth in relation to the constellations a couple of thousand years later at this particular time, there are 13 constellations that cross the ecliptic. The 13th sign, if you Google 13th sign of the zodiac, they will say Ophiuchus, which means the serpent bearer. They will say that's Asclepius, the healer. They corrupted Imhotep, the great healer, from ancient Kemet, the great physician, healer, engineer, advisor of the king and so forth, the Ensu. They corrupted him to Asclepius, the healer, in Greek. But in the late period of Kemet, you not only had the triad of Ptah, Sekhmet, and Nefertim, these different divinities, but you also had Ptah, Sekhmet, and they would also venerate Imhotep as the son of Ptah and Sekhmet, meaning Ptah and Sekhmet governed his head. So that's why they said that Imhotep is the great healer. When the Greeks invaded Kemet, they said, well, that's Asclepius. He's the serpent bearer. He's the healer. We're going to say Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, is Asclepius. The mother, spiritual mother of Imhotep is Sekhmet, and she is the serpent bearer. She's the quote unquote Ophiuchus. She's the serpent bearer. The priests of Sekhmet are called Sunut. A certain class of priests of Sekhmet are called Sunut. Sunut means physicians. So they're the physicians, but they're also the priest class as well, because she's a divine killer, but she's also a divine healeress. So she's the serpent bearer. You have Neat, who is the archeress, but she's also the weaver and so forth. This is where they get Sagittarius from, the archer, the great archer. Kunwimu, the flat-horned ram, became a goat by the time the White Snarl Spring invaded. They called him Capricorn and so forth. and they talk about the she goat and so forth, and the sea goat, sometimes showing, depending on what you're looking at, feminine and so forth. But Kunwemu, the great ram of the south, was corrupted into a goat, the sea goat, and there's a reason why they say he's a sea goat and so forth, because he's connected to the release of the Hapi or Nile River. He unbolts the doors, as it says in the famine stele, and releases the river. And he has a place in the body, in the biological structure of the male and the prostate gland and so forth, that releases the fertile fluid and so forth, just like they say Kunwemu is the one that releases the flow of the river at the inundation of the river, so he can let that river flow out, inundate the land, fertilize the land, so the land can be, abundant. You have Aquarius, the water bearer, the one who pours the water in the sacred river. They stole that function and iconography from Hapi, the male deity of the river. And then you have Merit. She is the female divinity of the river. Hapi and Merit are male and female divinities. They are husband and wife and so forth. They govern the so-called Nile River. And then you have An and Remy, who are the male and female fish divinities. The two pilot fish for the boat of Ra. So when the boat of Ra is sailing through the sky and so forth, there are two pilot fish that govern and guide the boat of Ra. That's An, Anit, and Remy. And you'll see the fish standard on the head of the divinity and so forth. That is not Hapi, that is Remy and so forth. These are the two pilot fish, male and female and so forth. And this is where you get, they have solar and lunar capacities. This is where you get the two fish of Pisces. Now, what's important about that is we talk about the dates that they enter into their constellations. And as you can see, Shu and Tefnut, for example, the twins, June 21st is when the sun enters the constellation of Shu and Tefnut. So it's not May 21st, it's June 21st. The sun enters the constellation of Kepra, or so-called Cancer, July 21st. The sun enters the constellation of Heru Emaket on August 10th. And when you look at the actual dates that the sun actually enters into these sacred constellations, you'll find that 89% of the dates in the tropical zodiac are inaccurate. So that's why we put that information on. Okay. So let's get back to so now that we have that foundation, we know that calendar is misinformation. Of course, if you look at our Kukutuntum, the ancestral jurisdiction, we go into details showing that Jesus is a fictional cartoon character who never existed. Whether you say Jesus or Yeshua, Yahweh Shah, or Isa, never existed. Not the Talmudic character, not the character in Christianity, not the character in the Quran and so forth, never existed, black or white. And we prove that. Muhammad is a fictional character. Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Buddha, Brahman, these fictional characters don't exist. We do not track time based on fictional cartoon characters who never exist. In our Kukutuntum, the ancestral jurisdiction, we show how these characters were manufactured. Hold on, let some people in right quick. Okay. So when we use the terminology, instead of saying, for example, we are in the year 13,022, as opposed to 2022, number one, of course, there was no Jesus, so nothing was happening 2,000 years ago, so we don't track time based on a fictional cartoon character that was manufactured to enslave the minds of our people. But we are in the midst of a 26,000-year astronomical cycle. We are in the middle of that cycle, hence the years beginning with 13,000. So this is 13,022. If we said 1993, for example, we'll say 12,993, because we're basing this on the Afuraitkait, or the great year cycle. Now, So let's get into this new year. So we say the majority of Akan people celebrate the new year at some point within the Gregorian calendar months of August, September, or October. And for certain groups of Akanfo, the new year celebration is called oh-jee. So on the continent, for those who are not acknowledging the false European New Year, because some of them will celebrate the new year on January 1st because they've been colonized mentally, but those who still maintain the proper traditional calendar, it shifts between August, September, and October. But it's around that time, around the time of the, inclusive of the autumn equinox and so forth. Most people celebrate for 7 days. You have some areas who celebrate or have an observance for 40 days. Now, so we say that here, 7 days, some 40 days, most seven days. Oh-jee in Akan means purification. Jida means to purify, to cleanse, and so forth. That's the verb, and oh-jee is the noun, purification and so forth. It also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification. That ceremony on a major scale is the New Year ceremony. It's the time of purification. It's the end of the warm cycle. It's the harvest time. But when you harvest the fruits of your labor and so forth, you take the seeds out and then you plant those. So it's also a conception time. So the end of the year has met, as Akan people would say, the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next cycle. So it behooves us to harvest what we, the fruits of our labor over the past cycle, incorporate that, but then take the seeds of what we have planted or what we have, harvested and what we benefited from and plant those and begin that conception phase. So that's why we, in the September time frame cycle, is the end of the warm cycle, it's the beginning of the cooling cycle. The harvest time, but also the seeding time. You're receiving, but then you're also conceiving. So it's a time to take, stock of what's, taking place, purify ourselves so we can go into this next cycle pure and clean and focused in this. Now, so we say we purify ourselves physically and spiritually, reestablish our values, our ancestral culture, rededicate ourselves individually and as an Afuraitkait community, African Black community, to our individual and collective nkra and nkrabeya, our divine function, which we'll get into. Now, what our Nananomsom showed us, which we've been able to prove linguistically and cosmologically, they showed us that the Akan people come from ancient Kana, the Khan land, first land, foremost land, land of the beginning. That is one of the titles of ancient Nubia. It was called the Khan land. Khan means first, foremost, from the beginning. The Khan land is ancient Nubia. The language and culture that we carried from ancient Khan to Kamit and to the Western Kana Empire, Akan Empire, the Empire of Kana and so forth, the Ghana, a couple of thousand years ago. Within 1,000 years later, because of invasions, we moved from the ancient Empire of Ghana, around where Mali is now and so forth, further south towards the forest belt, where the Republic of Ghana is now. We continued our Kana civilization. We went from the Khan land or Khanat, the Khanit land, which is Nubia. Some of us migrated north to establish Kamit. Some remained south in Khanat, Nubia. After the invasions of the Romans and Greeks and Arabs and so forth, some of our people migrated west. Some stayed there. Some of them are still there. When we travel to Nubia in May, you will see some of the Black, Nubians and so forth who are still living there in their villages and so forth. And we interact with them, go to their village and everything else. So, but some of us moved west, established the Kana Empire, the Akan Empire. Some of us moved further south, southwest into the forest belt and savanna regions and reestablished that Akana civilization over 1,000 years ago. And then hundreds of years after that, some of us were taken from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the enslavement era. So this is how we were forced to migrate from ancient Kana Nubia to the Empire of Kana Ghana into the forest, empires of Akana and so forth into the Western Hemisphere. But they showed us not only that migratory pattern, but we're the same people cosmologically, culturally, practicing the same religion, worshiping the same divinities and so forth. We have published a number of books dealing with that linguistically as well. They don't just give you information, they also show you the proof. So, and let's go to that real quick. One of the things they direct me to do and so forth, I'm going to switch that up. This is a short article we published as part of a larger work that is forthcoming. A dictionary, a comparative dictionary of the Akan and Kamit language and so forth. But this is Akan vocalizations of our ancestral language of Kamit. Now we give a few examples just to prove what we're talking about. So when you look at a term like in the hieroglyphic dictionary, the medutu dictionary, the so-called hieroglyphic dictionary and so forth, you'll see the bowl with the lip, which is the ka sound, the k sound, and the horizontal bolt, which is the s sound, so it's ks. And whenever Egyptologists previously didn't know what the vowel placement should be, they didn't know if it should be o or a or e or I or u and so forth, there was a convention where they would just stick an e in between consonants just to facilitate pronunciation as they were trying to translate these texts. But it's really the k sound, which is the bowl with the lip, and the horizontal bolt, which is the s, so it's ks. And instead of just writing ks, back then Egyptologists would stick an e in between those consonants just to facilitate pronunciation until they figured out what the real vowel placement would be, and then they would update the text. Today, Egyptologists don't do that. They just put the consonants there and that's it. But in the past, they would stick an e in between, but that just meant they weren't sure. As you can see here in the Coptic dialect, the late period of Kamit, the late period dialect that came into usage about 2,000 years ago, near the end of the dynastic period and so forth, you'll see they spelled it in Coptic as K-A-C-K-E-C, which is kaskes. The term in the ancient language kaskes or keskes means to chatter foolishly, to jest. Now, if we are the same people and we speak the same language and we worship the same divinities and so forth, and we never stop, then we should be able to look into the Akan dictionary, the Asante dictionary, the Tree dictionary, and see the same terms with the same meanings. That's what our Nsamampo instructed us to do. So when you check that out in the Asante dictionary, the Tree language dictionary, kasa, to talk much, talk noisily, to chat. Kasa is the actual proper vocalization of ks, to chatter foolishly, to jest. We will pronounce that kasa, to talk much, talk noisily, to chat. So we're still using the same terminology. The term hem, to roar, to bellow, hem, a cry, a roar, a bellow, a battle cry, and so forth. That's in the language of ancient Kamit. You look in the Akan language in the Asante dictionary, hama, a boisterous, and then they give the example of the sea rages as if agitated by a storm, inferring raging. So it's raging and boisterous and loud. Hem in ancient Kamit means to roar, to bellow, the battle cry and so forth. Even the crown with the triple atef crown is called the hem crown, or the battle cry crown, because it's loud, boisterous. They yell a battle cry running out into the field. They start yelling, and then they go wage war, loud and boisterous. So hem in ancient Kamit, we pronounce it as hama in Akan. So it's the same term. If you look at the term kai, and it's also spelled ka without the I at the end, kai or ka, to think out, to cry out, call out, tell out, to say. You look in the Akan language, ka, to emit a sound, to utter, speak, say, tell. So ka meaning speak, to say, or tell. Kai in ancient Kamit meaning to speak, to say, to tell out, and so forth. Same terminology. You have sha or shay, to fix, to appoint, to decide, to allot, to destine, to predestinate, to ordain. And that goes into the she and shebia in the Akan language and so forth, and cosmology. So sha or she, to predestinate, to appoint, to fix, and so forth. In the Akan orthography, the HY combination is a shet, the shet sound. And it sounds like an SH. In most dictionaries, when they have the HY combination in Akan, they will say shet, and they'll spell it with the SH. Shet means, one of the definitions, to fix, to set up, institute, to predestine, predestinate, appoint, to or ordain beforehand. So now you get into a cosmological term, not just a term like, kasa kasa, to chatter foolishly, or hama hama, boisterous, or ka, to speak or say or tell, but now you're talking about predestination, to ordain beforehand. It has to do with divine, your divine function in creation. She or she in ancient Kamit, she in Akan. And then you have the terms ari, an, or ari in ancient Kamit, which is the eye. It also means to turn a glance towards something, a seeing, a look, a looking, look, glance, and so forth. And Akan, that's pronounced any, A-N-I, any, which means the eye or eyes. It also means a look. This would be N or any in ancient Kamit, to turn a glance towards something, to look. The I, edi, this R is a rolling R, so instead of Ari, it's Ari, Ari or Ari. That becomes any in Akan, the eye, but also a look, to look, to glance, and all of that. You have the term ban, to be evil, to be wicked. In Coptic, the Coptic dialect is ban. You look at Akan, bani, bad, evil, wicked. And in the Fanti dialect in Akan, instead of bani, it's simply ban, just like it is in Coptic and ancient Kamit. But ban meaning to be evil, to be wicked, bani meaning evil, to be wicked in Akan. As you can see, the various terms are the exact same terms with the same meanings. There are thousands of terms, and we're compiling a dictionary right now where we can show the direct relationship. If somebody from the Akan tradition right now was transported back to ancient Kamit and so forth, and they heard the people speaking, every single word they said, they would understand because they're speaking the same terms. The only difference is the, verb and subject agreement and so forth, but they would understand every single word that was said. And just two more, you have ma, which means to grant or to give. And then Akan, ma, to give, hand, communicate, bestow, impart, grant, present, and so forth, same terminology. But the important one for the context that we're talking about, you see jira, which we said is the verb, to cleanse, as for example, to cleanse from guilt or moral or religious uncleanness, to sanctify, to consecrate. That's jira. That's the verb. Oh-jee is the noun. We also have oh-jee, the yam custom, an annual festival celebrated in the month of August or September when the first yam is eaten. That's the harvest time and so forth. Being considered also the beginning of a new year, twra, jira, to execute or celebrate the yam festival amongst the Aakhuamuman people and so forth, as well as the Aakhuamuman people and so forth. That's the term. So there are two different variations in ancient Kamit, twri, and then the hand with the open palm facing upward and so forth is the D sound, so that's DWR. And what does TWRA or DWR mean in ancient Kamit? To be clean, to cleanse, to purify, to celebrate a ceremony of purification. So jira means to cleanse or purify, purification, but it also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification. In the Akan tradition, jira means to cleanse and from uncleanliness and so forth, purify, sanctify, to consecrate, but it also means to celebrate a ceremony of purification. A European looking at that, what is that ceremony of purification that they're celebrating? We have a full 7-day oh-jee purification ceremony, which is the New Year ceremony. It also has to do with the weekly purification that we do when we cleanse our spiritual head, our akra, the Afuraitkait soul washing ceremony, when we cleanse our head spiritually on the day of the week that we're born. That's the day that the divinities energy of that particular day, of that soul lunar planetary body, is most prominent. We're going to get into some of that, but that's the year or weekly oh-jee or purification. But then you have the yearly purification, which is the oh-jee ceremony, 7-day ceremony. So let's get out of that. Okay, so this is what we're saying here. We're just giving that definition here on the page, talking about the, the meaning and so forth. Now, so on the continent, of course, August, September, October, it shifts in between. When we were directed by our Nananomsom to reestablish the oh-jee observance, the 7-day oh-jee observance back in 12,000. 20 years ago, actually 21 years ago and so forth, we were directed to calibrate it towards the autumn equinox. So the autumn equinox falls on either September 22nd or September 23rd in the Gregorian calendar, that particular, time frame when there's, the Earth's ecliptic is crossing the pathway of the sun and so forth. So the sun is on a quote unquote cross. The Earth's celestial equator is crossing the ecliptic. So the Earth, the equator around the Earth, if you project it out into space, that's the celestial equator. Like if you project it out like a plane and so forth, like a disk, equator from the Earth, and it was projected out. The Earth's pathway around the sun is the ecliptic, and when there's a cross between the celestial equator and the ecliptic, and the sun is on that cross, quote unquote, then that's the equinox, equal days and equal nights. 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness. That happens in March, the March equinox, which is spring, and also in fall. So we take advantage of that point of balance, the balancing point of Earth and so forth, and we take advantage of that energy. Our Aakhuamuman directed us to always calibrate it towards that point. So if the autumn equinox, for example, and we say the Atem equinox, because the deity Atem and the female divinity Atemet are the origin of the term autumn and so forth. This year, the autumn equinox takes place. It takes place on September 22nd, but it takes place at 9 p.m. The first full day of fall is September 23rd, because the sun is already set by the time the equinox happens, so the day you haven't even had a full day yet. So when it happens like that, then the September 23rd, the first full day of autumn, Atemet, is September 23rd. Therefore, that is our New Year's Day. And because that's our New Year's Day, that's the final day of our 7-day observance, then we start on September 17th, and we'll go from September 17th through September 23rd, and September 23rd is our New Year's Day. If the first day, full day of the autumn equinox was on September 22nd, then we would start on September 16th, and 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, 22nd will be our New Year's Day. But this year, it so happens that the first full day of Atemet or autumn is September 23rd, so that is our New Year's Day. That is a Fida, that is a Friday, which is governed by the female divinity Afi or Afia, which is a title of Het Heru, and the male divinity Fi, which is a title of the divinity Men or Amin Men. So it's a Fida and so forth, Friday, and the energy that governs men and Heteru, or Fi and Afi and Akan and so forth. And people call Kofi and Afi and Afu and so forth, but the New Year's Day lands on that day this year, and that's going to color the energy of the year, that kind of energy of men and Heteru, or Fi and Afi. And they deal with fertility and fusion and divine complementary union and marriage and so forth, balanced unions and so forth. That's going to color the energy of this year, this coming year. September 23rd will be our first day of our new year, so it will be the first day of the year 13,023. Now, this will be our, this particular observance is our 22nd observance. So in 13,001, which was so-called 2001, was the first time that we had a full 7-day observance. And of course, that was so-called 2001, 13,001. So this year, 13,022, which we're in right now, this is the 22nd year of us actually engaging in this process. And September 23rd will be the first day of 13,023, so-called 2023, 100 days before Europeans celebrate on January 1st, which is the dead of winter, the dead of night, when everything is cold, dark, and frozen and dead. Then they say Happy New Year. Only people coming out of the caves of Europe will look for the coldest, darkest, weakest time of the year to come out in the middle of the night when it's cold, dark, and damp and scream Happy New Year. But we've never done that. There's no basis for doing that. Even for individuals who talk about the star series moving to a certain point and so forth on January 1st, that's not a basis for a New Year observance. That's a foolish rationalization for continuing to participate in a quote unquote New Year point or New Year observance that has no basis in any natural cycle or the beginning of a cycle. So now, so we have 7 days for our observance. Each one of the 7 days, we know, and let's just pull this up right now. Let's go to our page. One of the things we have done is we published a couple of books and a number of articles. These are volumes 1 and 2, and we have the other volumes coming out on what we call the Akradin bosom. The Akradin bosom are the abosom who govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week in Akan culture. Now, if you look on our Akradin bosom page, you will see that we show the Akradin, or the quote unquote soul names for people born on specific days. In our Akan tradition, we're not named after the day of the week. When Akan people were forced into Christianity and Islam and so forth, and they rejected their own ancestral religious practice or certain elements of the practice, they wanted to pretend like they weren't dealing in real religion, which is polytheistic. We invoke many male and female divinities. The idea of monotheism is a foolish, inferior idea coming from the inferior mind of the Caucasian. They know there's no such thing as monotheism, but they are incapable of communicating with any divinity. They don't have a blood connection or spirit genetic connection to any deity, so they can't communicate with the forces in nature. They can't be possessed by them. We can. They didn't want us to continue to engage in that. So when they invaded our civilizations and so forth, they sought to get rid of our ancestral religious practice, put forth this false idea that there was only one divinity and they were the representatives of that one divinity. So we had to go through them to get to that one fake divinity. But the reality is there are multiple deities that we communicate with and become possessed by, and we are connected to by blood and so forth. So Akan people who are colonized, they started pretending like they're not polytheistic, because that's against Christianity and against Islam and Judaism and so forth. And the reason it's against that, not because it's not true. The whites and offspring know that polytheism is reality. But they don't want us to understand that, because we would listen to the forces in nature instead of listening to them, and we would massacre them. They would be allowed to stay in our countries and rule the countries and rule the economies and so forth. They knew that, you know, they couldn't control a population. If the population, the people could go home, set up a shrine, communicate with an ancestral spirit or divinity, and they'll be directed to slaughter the white enemy. So they tried to wipe that out. So you have Akan academics and other individuals who just say that these are the dadin or the day names and so forth, and we're named after the days of the week. We are named after the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. They are assigned to us pre-incarnation in our head region. If you're born on Awusida, for example, Sunday, the male name is Kwesi or Kwasi, Akwesi, C or CC, and so forth. Female names are Akosuya, Akosua, Akwesiba, Akwesiwa, Esi, Kisi, and so forth. The male and female divinities are Wusi and Esi. In our first volume, we talk about these two divinities. This is Osar and Aset. In ancient Kemet, Osar, also called Asi. Aset, in the Coptic dialect, her name is written Esi, and so forth. So that's the form of Osar and Aset, for example, who operate through the planet, through the solar disk and so forth, and they're operating in harmony with Ra and so forth, and Ra'et. So they're called Awusi and Esi. In ancient Kemet, they're Asi and Esi. In Akan, they're Awusi and Esi, or Asi and Esi, and so forth. So people born on that day, males and females, the reason that we are born on the day is because it's an indication that we were assigned to these divinities pre-incarnation. And so therefore the deity made sure that we were born on their day to let the community know, this is one of my children. If you are born on Tuesday, Ben-Nada or Aben-Nada, the day of the divinity Benna or Abenna, that means you were assigned to the Abosom Benna if you're a male, or the Abosom Abenna if you're a female. And Benna and Abenna made sure that you came into the world on Benada or Abenada Tuesday to indicate to the community, this is a child of Benna. Benna in Akan is called Bedat or Bedet in ancient Kemet. That's Heru Bedet or Heru Bedat, so-called Herakuti and so forth. He's called Ogun in Yoruba. He's called Ogu in Vodun. In Akan, he's the Abosom of hot metal and war and fire and so forth. In ancient Kemet, he's the deity of hot metal and war and fire. In Yoruba, he's the deity of hot metal, war, and fire, the same in Vodun. Abena, the female divinity, is Setchima. She's called Setchima in Akan. She's called Setchima or Setchimet or Sekmet in ancient Kemet. And just so you can see, we have the first 2 volumes of the Akradin Bosom books, but then we have an article on each one of these deities. So for example, you'll see Abena, the Abosom of Abena and Benada. Abenada, we go into detail proving that Setchima, her title Setchima or Sekmet in ancient Kemet, comes from Setchima and Akan. It's the same title, the same divinity, same sacred colors, same function in creation and so forth. So we talk about all of the divinities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. We have an article on each one. You can download that, from the website, including the first 2 volumes of the books. So when you see this chart, you see the names of the days of the week. You see the names of the male and female deities that govern each day of the week, meaning who animate the solar, lunar, and planetary body that governs that day. So in that spirit, just like spirits possess us and they operate through our bodies and so forth and heal, they also possess the planets. Their spiritual energy penetrates the planet, penetrates the solar disk, penetrates the moon and so forth, and that becomes the shrine for that divinity, and they transmit their energy through that shrine. So Awusi and Esi will possess the sun and transmit their Awusi energy, their Esi energy through the solar disk, the Oriya, the sun, to the world and so forth. You're born on that particular day. Your energy is colored by that because you were assigned to them pre-incarnation. The same with all the other divinities. So you'll see the male and female deity that governs that day of the week. Because they govern the solar, lunar, and planetary body, the names, the akradin, the soul names, and so forth, and their different variations. Different dialects have different variations. You have Akua, Infanti is Ekua or Equia. You have Afua in the Asante dialect, for example. Infanti is Efua or Efuia, and so forth. You have, variations. Kwaku instead of Kweku. It just depends on the Akan dialect. But we also show the praise names as well. So you have Nkoso, for example, a praise name of Afu and so forth. Ochini, praise name for Kofi and so forth. Ojam, a praise name for Kwabena. Jama, praise name for Abena and so forth. So the praise names as well. Those praise names reflecting certain attributes of the divinity also shows the specific attributes of the individual who carries that deity's energy. So for example, Odwira, a praise name for a woman born on Sunday, Awusida, Odwira for a woman, and Odwira for a male, Odwira, which is with an extra A for a woman. Ba or boa means animal, and dria means tail, so the animal's tail or the fly whisk and so forth, that's a symbol of sovereignty. It comes from ancient Kemet and so forth. But you see kings on the continent today, they have the animal's tail, like the cow's tail, the animal's tail, and they, swing the tail, getting rid of negative energy and so forth as a sign of sovereignty and protection or repelling disorder. Odwira, the animal's tail or whisk, represents sovereignty and so forth. That is a praise name for someone born on a Sunday, whether it's, a male or female and so forth. They carry that energy of Awusi and Asar and Aset, these sovereigns that establish civilization, so they have certain praise names that reflect their energy. So on this page, we also show the relationship between these divinities in Akan, in the Yoruba tradition, in the Ewe tradition, in the culture of ancient Kemet. So Awusi in Akan is Obatala in Yoruba, Dangbe and Vodun, Asar in ancient Kemet. We just talked about Benan, Abena, Ogun, and Iyami Abini. There's a female Orisha called Iyami Abini, who's also called Edan in Yoruba, that is Sekhmet and so forth. You have Ogu and Ananu and Vodun. You have Herubedeti and Sekhmet and ancient Kemet. For example, you have Awuku and Akua. Awuku, which is Kweku Anansi, the trickster and also the messenger of the supreme being, goes back and forth from heaven and earth, carrying the messages on his spider's web. That web is a worldwide web of energy. He weaves a worldwide web of energy, Tumi, divine power that permeates the black substance of space and all the planets, suns, moons, stars, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afuraitkait human beings. We have a place on that divine web. And that's the communicative network that Kweku weaves and so forth. And then we can communicate with one another, as well as the divinities. He's the divine communicator, but he's also the trickster and so forth. He is Awuku or Kwaku or Kweku, also called Kweku Anansi, the great spider and so forth, Anansi Kokroko and Akan. He's Eshu in Yoruba, the trickster, also the communicator, the owner of Ashe and so forth. He's Legba in Vodun. He's Set in ancient Kemet. Set was placed at the prow of the boat of Ra, and he thunders or speaks for Ra when Ra sails across the sky and so forth. He is the messenger. And then Akua, we see the Akua Badal. That's actually a symbol of the female divinity Akua. And Akua is called Agberu in Yoruba, the female Orisha who is the wife of Eshu. And she has a little basket where she carries the offerings from us to the Orisha and Egungun and so forth. The wife of Eshu is called Agberu, and it means the load bearer because she has the basket. She puts the basket on her head and carries the offerings. The wife of Kweku Anansi is Akua, and one of the praise names of Akua is Kukua, which means an earthen vessel, because she has the vessel when she carries the load and so forth. She's called Koni, the wife of Legba and Vodun, and she's called Nebet Het in ancient Kemet. And when you look at Nebet Het, of course, the wife of the trickster, Set, she has the little vessel on her head and she carries the offerings, the sacred offerings, as the one who governs the ritual enclosure and so forth. So we show the relationship between these divinities in the different traditions. When people say you can't make a one-to-one, correspondence between deities in different traditions, you can when you know who the deities actually are. But when people don't know who the deities are, then they say, well, this one seems like this one, but it's not the same thing. That's because they don't know who these deities are. And most people practicing the Akan tradition, they did not know that the divinities that govern the 7 days of the week were the spirit forces that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. They didn't know who these deities are. So they couldn't make a one-to-one correspondence because they didn't even know they existed. They thought they were just named after days. But when you know who the actual deities are, you know exactly how they show up in different traditions. Just like we call the sun Odwira in Akan, the Yoruba call the sun Orun, in ancient Kemet is called the Aten, masculine, and Atenit, feminine. We're talking about the same solar orb, but we just have a different name for it in our languages. We can make a one-to-one correspondence because we're talking about the same entity. When we're talking about Awusi and Akan, when he shows up in the Yoruba tradition, one of his titles is Obatala. He's also Orishanla and so forth, Osala and so forth, different titles, but we're talking about the same entity. We know exactly who we're talking about. So, and we go into detail in the various articles to prove that in detail. One other thing that we show, these 11 male and female divinities governing the solar, lunar, planetary bodies. We show their relationship to the physical body. So the 11 major body systems are governed by these 11 major divinities. So they carry the energy of the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, but even when you look biologically, of course, Ajua, which is our set, same as Essi and so forth, governing the womb and birth canal and so forth. Kwekwa Nansi, the great messenger and so forth, communicative force, bringing the messages and carrying the messages from heaven to earth and earth to heaven and so forth. The World Wide Web in the body is the nervous system. That is the World Wide Web, and Kwekwa Nansi governs that web, and he goes back and forth along that web, just like a spider going back and forth along the web and so forth. You'll find that Amen Men, who governs Men Menida, which is Saturday. That's the deity Amen Men. And Akan Men Menida is the term for Saturday, Men Men's Da or Day. That's the deity Amen Men. And people named Kwame or Kwamina and so forth are servants Kwa of the deity Men. He governs the planet Herukapet, the planet Men and so forth. He governs that structural system, the skeletal system and so forth. So we go into detail showing in each one of the articles who's who, the 11 major body systems that they govern. They govern all natural cycles in creation, the movement of the sun, moon, and planets and so forth in relationship to Earth, govern all natural cycles. This is why these are the major divinities that govern our head and so forth. So we go into detail about that, but that's the reason why that's important is because our 7-day observance reflects that. Each one of the days of the week carries a different energy complex, and then we have specific things that we align with on those days of the week to align with the energy that governs the day. So we do that throughout the course of the year, just in general, by invoking these divinities. When we say it's Joda, which is Monday, or Ben-Nada or Aben-Nada, and it's Tuesday, every time we say these names, we're invoking the divinity that governs them. So let's switch over real quick. Okay. So later on the page, we say the 7 days of our oh-jee observance revolve around the 7 root mbe, which is the plural term for proverbs, divine wisdom, teachings, and so forth. 7 root mbe of wab, oh-jee, which is a specific body of knowledge founded upon the 7 mbe. So let's look at that real quick. This is our oh-jee page on our website. So you see the page oh-jee, that's what we're talking about. And without going through that, these 7 principal, these 7 mbe or proverbs associated with the energy of the 7 days of the week, we govern ourselves by these and the energy complex that they represent. So it's not just 7 sayings, there are deities that carry that energy into the world. So these 7 proverbs, mbe, govern the 7 days of the week in our 7-day observance. So when we get to September 17th, and we go through September 17th through September 23rd, instead of, for example, Saturday is September 17th. Saturday is Miminida or Amiminida in Akan, the day of Amen Min and Amen Mini, the divinities and so forth. But instead of it just being Saturday, it also carries the energy of that proverb. So every day of the week for our 7-day observance, there's a sacred wisdom teaching associated with that day. So let's start with Awusida Sunday and go through Saturday. So on the Sunday within our 7-day week, instead of it just being Sunday in general, it also has a sacred name. Now we can send this out to you, but we're just going to go through it. It's Okradinda, and the proverb is Kradin ye Nyamewa Nyame Ochean. Kradin, the soul name, is the spokesperson of Nyamewa and Nyame to your spirit. Let's go back real quick. Just want to show you this. Okay, so this is from the temple of Apet, said in ancient Kemet. This is the deity Amen, the great father of the universe and so forth. Sometimes referred to as Amen Ra, but it's Amen because Ra is a different deity. And this is Amenet, the great mother, sometimes called Amenet Ra'et. So Amen and Amenet are the great father and great mother who comprise the 2 halves of the divine whole that we would call the supreme being. Well, we have a great father and great mother. Amen in ancient Kemet is called Nyame, Ame in Akan, and Amenet or Amenat is called Amewa in Akan. So Nyame and Nyamewa is Ame and Amewa, which is Amen and Amenet, great mother and great father. So it's never been just a male divinity, Nyame. There's Nyame and Nyamewa. And we did an article showing the etymology of the term Nyamewa and Nyame. But let's get back to the oh-jee page. So when we look at these mbe or proverbs, that's saying that your soul name, this is a proverb, your soul name, your kradin, pra means soul and din means name. So your kradin, your soul's name, the divinity that governs your head, that is your okra, is your own personal abosom. You have a male divinity seated in your head that communicates with you if you're a male. You have a female abosom that is seated in your head that communicates with you and directs you towards what your divine function is in every moment of every day. If you're female, it's a female divinity. If you're male, it's a male divinity. Every Afuraitkait group has that. They have it in their own language. We call it the okra for males, okrawa or okra for females. That's the soul. That means it's a deity that dwells in the head region. In Yoruba, they call it the Ori Inu. That's your inner Ori. That is your personal Orisha. That's the divinity that governs the head. In Vodun, they call it the Selido. That means you have a Vodou that is seated, installed in your head region. That's a deity that was sent by Inyamewa, Inyame, the great mother and great father, to guide you throughout the course of your life. An elder or an elderess divinity, force in nature that gives you that direction and guidance. So your Kradin, your soul's name, for example, Kwesi is Kwa Asi. Kwa means to serve or a servant of, and Asi is the divinity, which is Asar. But Kwasi or Kwesi is the servant of Asi. That's the name of the divinity. That's my soul's name. His name, that divinity in my head region, is Kwasi. If you're a woman and you were born on Abinada Tuesday, that means Abina, who is Sekhmet. Abina, that name, Abina, is the name of the divinity that governs your head. That's your soul's name. That's the abosom in your head's name. Your soul's name is the spokesperson, the Ocheame, the spokesperson of the Supreme Being to your spirit. Meaning when you're trying to live in harmony with divine order and you hear the name, hear your soul name and so forth, someone calls you Kofi or Afia or Kwaku or Akua or Yao or Ya or Abba and so forth, you know that as soon as those names are spoken, that name is spoken, those sound vibrations are released, that is a ritual invocation or provocation of that divinity that governs your head. And it forces your spirit to align with the function of that divinity. And if you're off base, if you're engaged in thoughts, intentions, and actions that are out of harmony with order, then that ritual invocation, you hearing your name or you saying your name or you're contemplating your name and so forth, it helps to realign you with reality. That collection of sound vibrations is a formula that helps your sum, your spirit, realign with divine order. So literally your Kradin, your soul's name, that collection of sound vibrations functions as an Ochiame, a spokesperson of the Supreme Being to you. That's like Nyame wa Nyame, reminding you of what your divine function is and what deity governs. So we reflect on that and we invoke the divinities that govern Awusidara Sunday in connection with that on our 7-day observance. Wotumi fra mboja nanso wontumi mfra okra means the blood may be mixed, but the soul, the okra cannot be mixed. So, of course, these proverbs are associated, of course, they're cosmological and they deal with divine principles, but they're also specific to us. We have our own name associated with the divinity that governs our head, our Kradin. So that reminds us of the fact that we have a divine function. You have a deity in your head region. You have a specific function to execute. And just to give you an example of that kind of function, let's switch it back to you see Herubedeti and Sekhmet, which is Bina and Abina. They govern the planet Bina, which is Mars and so forth. In the body, they govern the immune system, which is Herubehudet Bina, and the lymphatic system, which is Sekhmet Abina. That's in your physical body. The immune system and the lymphatic system are the shrines, the physical shrines for Bina and Abina in the body. In the divine body of creation of Amen and Amenet, Bina and Abina execute the same function. They are the divine immune system and lymphatic system in the great divine body. They're the forces that preserve and enforce order in creation. When things get out of order, these forces stamp out disorder in creation. Just like when disorder arises within your cells, your immune system and lymphatic system isolate, for example, the cancerous cells, kill them and expel them from the body for the preservation of the organism, of you. So they have that function. They seek out disorder, destroy disorder, repel disorder for the maintenance and the integrity of the divinely ordered structure, which is you. People who are children of Bina and Abina, they have that natural inclination to seek out disorder within the community, isolate it, exterminate it, expel it from the body. where they have policing functions, military functions, security functions, some dealing with even in the medical field when people are surgeons and so forth, and they're cutting out tumors and removing them to preserve the integrity of the body and so forth. And they're using metal to cut into these tumors and so forth. You have individuals who have that natural inclination towards those kinds of activities because they're children of the divinity that governs hot metal, war, fire, the immune system, destroying disorder for the purpose of the preservation of divine order and maintaining divine order. So you have a natural function in creation. Just like every organ in your body and every one of these organ systems have a specific function in your body, we as cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being have a specific function to execute within creation. And that function is defined by the deity that governs our head. When you look at the divinities that govern your head in the Akan tradition, and you look at the major body system that they govern, then that reflects the kind of function you have within the communal body, within the body politic of Afuraitkait people. So if you're a child of Bena, Abena, you have that policing function. If you're a child of Aku and so forth, you may have a healing function where you seek out, plant life and mineral life to heal people of different ailments and so forth. If you're a child of Nana Yao and so forth, you may have a, political function, an administrative function, a governing function and so forth. So it's a number of different things depending on the divinity that governs. Now, so all of us have a specific function. So these principles are cosmological, but specifically for us in the Western Hemisphere, they are tailored to remind us of what our function in the world is and to renew us and purify us in that function. The first one talks about Pradin, you have a soul name. That means you have a divinity that governs your head. That means you have a divine function. The second one talking about the blood may be mixed, but the soul is not. If you were someone who was snatched away from the region of Kumasi in Ghana 300 years ago, you're an Asante and so forth, Asante warrior and Asante warrioress, twins and so forth, and you were snatched away from the Asante Empire, sold into enslavement and so forth, forced into North America and on a plantation, and you waged war, and you fought against the whites in their offspring and so forth, and you copulated with other, you were forced to copulate with people from different ethnic groups on the plantation and so forth, and had children and grandchildren, but eventually you transitioned. Now you're this great Asante warrior, Asante warrioress. You're an ancestress now. You're watching your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren grow up in America, your descendants. And every generation you're guiding them. Those who pay attention to you, you're giving them direct guidance. They see you as their great ancestral spirit who's forced into North America and so forth. About 300 years later, when it's time for you to return, through your great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter who grew up and became a woman and got married and so forth, when she copulates with her husband and draws your spirit back into the womb, and you're born 40 weeks later for the first time in 300 years, your blood may have been mixed because of what's happened over the past 300 years, but your soul, your okra, can never be mixed. You're the very same Asante warrior or Asante warrioress who has returned to the world. Because of what happened in the ancestral blood circle, you may be a little bit lighter brown than you were the last time you were here because of blood mixture. But your soul, your okra, and your spirit-genetic identity, your transcarnational identity through successive incarnations, that identity can never be mixed. So you're the same individual. You may have, blood mixture and DNA from the Igbo ethnic group because somebody in your blood circle mixed with one of them, or the Fang ethnic group or whatever, but you're the same Asante woman or Asante man who's connected to Asante ancestresses and ancestors, who are connected to specific divinities, who are connected to the same matriclan and patriclan deities that your clan has been connected to for thousands of years. So you still have Asante identity, spirit genetic identity that can never be wiped out because of blood mixture. The blood mixture and the fact that you're a little bit lighter brown than you would have been is simply a scar. Just like if you get a cut on your arm and then the melanin helps to heal the wound and so forth, and you have a scar, every time you see the scar, it's a reminder of what took place, what happened to put you in a position where you got that cut. It's also a reminder that your arm healed. When we see a light brown scar, we're walking around with light brown skin, that's simply a scar. It's a reminder of what happened in the ancestral blood circle over the past 300 plus years. It's also a reminder that the melanin dominance still prevailed because we're not melanin recessive crackers. So the melanin won out. It's a scar. It's a reminder of what happened in the blood circles. It's also a reminder of what can possibly happen if we don't maintain our culture. And of course, when we're grounded and conscious, we know we maintain our culture. So it's important for us to know in America and reaffirm that, purify ourselves with that understanding that the blood may be mixed, but the soul, the okra can never be mixed. People on the continent don't need to remind themselves of it because they know what clan they're from, they know what village they're from. There are people who've been living in those areas for the past few hundred years or even 1,000 years. That's not something that comes up. For us, we've been falsely, colonized with information, misinformation, saying you'll never find out who you are. Even if you do a DNA test and so forth, you can never find out who you are. You're just mixed up and you're not African. You're anything but African. That's pure foolishness. Your spirit is assigned a specific divinity and you're sent through a specific blood circle, specific matriclans and patriclans and so forth. We are still the same Afuraitkait individual who we were in the previous incarnation. We're the same spirit that has returned. Just because we change clothes doesn't mean we're a different individual. We're the same individual. So we need to reaffirm that in a ritual way every year, and that's connected to the second day of the week, which is Monday and so forth. Joda, offset, governing, birth and bringing ancestral spirits back into the world through the womb and birth canal and so forth. The blood may be mixed, the soul is not. And as you go through, you'll see that each one of these proverbs associated with the day of the week carries the energy of the day of the week. The third day of the week is Benada, Abinada, Tuesday, which is Sekhmet and Heru Behudet, Bena and Abena, Ogun and Iyami Abeni, and so forth. And the proverb, the divine wisdom teaching that we reaffirm every year ritually is Abarofo ye Achiwadiefo, na Achiwadiefo, Nina, Nye, Abarofo. All of the whites and their offspring, the Abarofo, are Achiwadiefo, and Achiwadie is a divine prohibition, a divine taboo, that which is divinely hated by the Supreme Being. Chi means to hate. Echide or Echiwadie is that thing, object, deed, or entity, adie, that is chi, hated by the Abosom, by the Supreme Being. For example, rape is something that is hated, chi. Molestation is hated, chi. Dissexuality, homosexuality is hated by the Supreme Being, chi. That is divine prohibition. Echiwadie is a taboo, a divinely prohibited, divinely hated thing. And the word hate, chi, is part of that terminology. Now we show the etymology of the word hate from English hate, and then it goes to Greek akedos, and then the Proto-Germanic term ket or keet and so forth. But that goes back to the ancient term in ancient Kemet, keet or cheat, which means to reject, to destroy, to break or destroy. The Proto-Indo-European language family stole that from the language of ancient Kemet, to break or destroy, chi, to reject, to repel, to break, destroy, and so forth. And in Akan, we still say chi, which means to hate, to repel, to reject, and so forth. Your immune system is the chi force that hates, repels, destroys cancerous cells, disorder for the preservation of divine order. So Echiwadie is a divine prohibition, that which is divinely hated. The Echiwadie foe, the group of people, foe, who are Echiwadie, divinely hated or rejected, taboo and so forth, are the whites and their offspring. They are spirits of disorder. They incarnate as spirits of disorder, spirits without a crop. So just like cancerous cells degenerate and manifest in the body, they're not embraced. They're isolated by the immune system, they're killed, and they're repelled from the body permanently. That's the divine response for the disfigured cells that are seeking to consume and destroy the other cells. They are echiwadie or taboo, and the immune and lymphatic system isolates them, exterminates them, and expels them. The whites and their offspring, that means white Europeans, white Asians, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Hindus, white Arabs, white Latinos, all non-Black people, are simply the cancerous cells in the body of Black humanity who seek to consume and destroy Black people wherever we exist in the world. Ever since they spilled out of Eurasia 12,000 years ago and migrated to Southern Europe and the Near East and India and Asia and Afuraitkait, Africa, North Central South America, Caribbean and so forth, Australia. As a cancerous group, they have sought to consume us whenever they could in their path. For thousands of years, they were unsuccessful. They've only had the upper hand over the past 150 plus years and so forth, but that's also coming to a close. But these are simply the cancerous cells in the body of Black humanity. They are Aakhuamuman by nature. So it's not like, well, some of them are cool and some, these are spirits of disorder who incarnate that way, just like cancer cells in the body. It's not like, well, some of the cancer cells are cool and some of them aren't. They are cancerous cells. Cancerous means they're disfigured and disordered. And they've manifested that reality since they've existed in the world. And they will continue until we make them extinct. That's reality. So we remind ourselves of that ritually, that the Odwirafo, the whites and their offspring, Odwirafo, are divinely hated, rejected. These are the cancerous cells in the body of Black humanity. Then we say, na Achiwadifo inyena inye Odwirafo. All of the whites and their offspring are spirits of disorder, divinely rejected. But all spirits of disorder are not white, meaning the non-Black population are spirits of disorder. But then you have some within our own community who will engage in disorder as well and seek to consume and destroy as well. So we have an internal threat and of course the external threat. So we have to neutralize and eradicate both accordingly. So don't just assume, of course, that just because someone looks like us, then that means they're one of us. You have people who are agents, some people are just criminal-minded and so forth, have been that way from previous incarnations until now and so forth. All of the whites and offspring are spirits of disorder, but we also have spirits of disorder within our population. So our children learn that from the beginning. So they're not fooled. They know who the enemy is on the outside. They also know to be careful and connect with those who are on the same wavelength and so forth, but understand that there are enemies on the inside as well. We know there are microbes that can invade our bodies from the outside and cause illness. We also know that we put certain things in our bodies, our own cells will turn into cancerous cells and start to consume and destroy us from the inside. So there's an external possible threat, an internal potential threat. We neutralize and eradicate both, accordingly. And that's a very important lesson that many of our people have not yet learned. We seek to keep trying to incorporate cancerous cells into our bodies, our communal body, and then wonder why they're still controlling and we're still on the bottom economically and politically and so forth. So we need to wake up. So, death wakes up those who sleep through life. And that's an Ebea proverb talking about what happens in the death process. If someone transitions and so forth, that does wake people up to what are they engaged in? What kind of life are you living? Are you executing your divine function? It wakes you up to what you're doing right now. Anytime someone transitions that's close or within the community, it's an opportunity for you to snap out of that, coma, cultural coma, if you've been in one, to see if you're on your divine function. That's on our side. On the side of the individual who transition, it is also a wake-up call for them, because if they've been brainwashed with Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or white culture in general, they were assuming that when they transitioned, they would see Jesus or Muhammad or Allah or Yahweh or Brahman or whoever, and they realize immediately that all those characters are 100% fictional. They wasted their entire incarnation embracing these foolish fictional cartoon characters. And now these are the kinds of spirits who are wayward and depressed and causing problems for the living family members, causing illnesses, oppressing them spiritually, and latching on to people spiritually, and latching on to children, and latching on to people when they're sleeping or going to work. When you're driving, you have this negative energy in the car and so forth. So They can cause all kinds of problems when we're not aware. But Owu, death, wakes up those who are sleeping through life. If you're sleeping through life, death can wake you up. Owu Berima and Owu Ba. There's a male force of death. His name is Owu Berima. There's a female spiritual force of death. She is Owu Ba, and so forth. These are the contractive forces in creation, male and female, that take spirits from the physical world into the spirit realm and so forth. When we have a proper relationship with them, we don't go to them before our time, but we understand their role in creation. So, and the final three we'll go through quickly. Nkrabia she sun sun tie asemokra. It is the Nkrabia, the divine function that makes your spirit obey your soul, your divine function. So, your soul, the divinity that governs your head. So each one of us, as Afuraitkait people, Afuraitkait people, African Black people, and African Black people only, we have a divine function. Cancer cells don't have a divine function. So Eurasians, whether they're Europeans, Asians, Americans, so forth, they don't have a divine function. They're a degeneration from the original. So cancerous cells don't have a divine function. That means you went against divine order, and that the result was a cancerous cell. Everything in creation that exists was not fashioned or didn't come into being under the direction of the Supreme Being. Some things are divinely created. You have a coca plant. That's a divinely created entity naturally occurring in the world. When Europeans take the coca plant and take it through a perverse process and manufacture a substance that never existed on earth before, crack cocaine, it exists, but it's not divinely created. It wasn't created because the Supreme Being directed white people to create cocaine. They went against divine order and created a product that's the result of disorder. So when we talk about our divine function, and we talk about the Nkrabia, our divine function, makes our spirit align with our crowd. We have a divine function in creation. We have a method and a way to operate. We have patriclan abosom and matriclan abosom, meaning patriclan divinity, a matriclan divinity. Just like you have DNA from your father, Y chromosome, and mitochondrial DNA from your mother, and that gives you certain characteristics, physically as well as temporally, emotionally, and so forth, and spiritually. But you have a divine force that animated the sperm cell, that's the patriclan divinity, a divine force that animated the ovum cell, which is the matriclan divinity, and that gives nuance to your spirit and the structure of your spirit. Just like you have physical DNA and from mother and father, and that gives nuance to the way you look and the way you operate in comparison to other individuals, showing you come from a specific blood circle. You have spiritual DNA, quote unquote, the matriclan divinity and patriclan divinity, the abusi abosom and the edge abosom, that gives nuance to the unique structure of your spirit, and you have a divine function to execute in the world. So the Nkrabia and Nkra, the feminine and masculine aspects of your divine function. And because you have a divine function that drives you, you feel that force in your head region and so forth. When you align with that, things go harmonious in your life. When you go against that pull in the head region, then you start creating disorder in your life. And we have ancestral religious practice to realign ourselves with divine order. So, Obaye Ofa, Oberima Ye Ofa, Ne Obrabo Asasi Fimu. And by the way, that proverb, Ebe proverb, dealing with the divine function, once again, that's something we must reaffirm as our people here in North America. Some of our people think we don't have a function. We just happen to be here, we just happen to be in America and so forth. We have a divine function, just like every Afuraitkait individual anywhere in the world. We have a specific function to operate within our clans and so forth, as well as to contribute to the world Afuraitkait community. But we need to know who we are individually, as well as a unique collective of Afuraitkait people in the Western Hemisphere, in this region of the Earth Mother's body. We're not dependent on our brothers and sisters on the continent to give us ancestral religion or culture, or give us an identity. We were born with an identity. We came into the world from the spirit realm as ancestresses and ancestors assigned to specific deities that govern our heads, as well as our patriclan and matriclan that have been with us for thousands of years. So we don't come in here empty-handed and we're just sitting around waiting for brothers and sisters on the continent to give us names and adopt us into a clan and give us a shrine. And we're not dependent on it. We know who we are. We already have an identity, and then when we connect with them, we're connecting as brothers and sisters on the same plateau, on the same planet. That means woman is half Ofa, man is half Ofa. That is the law of ethical existence in the house of the Earth Mother. So the balance, divine balance of male and female governs all things. There's no male is superior, female is inferior, female is superior, male is inferior. There's no abuse of women. There's no control over women and so forth. That's white culture. We don't engage in that perverse culture. And in fact, we talk about Asase Fia, Asase Afia, or Asase Fimu and so forth. Just to be clear, here we have Asase Nebedetepet and Asase Nebepet. These are the two Asase goddesses, Abosom in ancient Kemet. Asase Nebedetepet is the fertile Asase, or the fertile Earth Mother. Asase Nebepet is the quote unquote barren Earth Mother and so forth. In Akan, Asase Nebedetepet is Asase Afua, the fertile Earth Mother. Asase Nebepet is Asase Ya, the barren Earth Mother. Asase Afua, the fertile Earth Mother, is where we plant our crops and so forth. Asase Ya, the barren Earth Mother, is where the bodies, the corpses are buried and so forth. She accepts the corpse and so forth, but she also adjudicates matters with regard to, judicial matters and so forth, all those kinds of things. Okay, get back to and the final one is Sankofa Jira Subain Afurakafu Afuraitkait, meaning Sankofa, the process of Sankofa, returning, going, and grasping, that purifies Jira through Subain, the character of Afurakani Afuraikani people. So when we engage the Sankofa process, that's what purifies our character. Sankofa, in the context of people on the continent, they can go back to a few generations of what was happening before Europeans invaded, seeing how the culture was established. And if they go through that process and reestablish their culture, minus the Christianity, Islam, and all that other foolishness and democracy and capitalism and so forth, and reestablish their own structures, they can get back on track with what they need to do. For us, the Sankofa process, we go back, when we're talking about purification, we Sankofa, return, go, and grasp from the beginning. We go back to our beginning point in creation. When our spirits were with Nyamewa Nyame, we were given a divine function. We were assigned specific divinities. We were sent into the womb and so forth. And then we came into the world and began to operate. We return, go, and grasp ritually during this time of the year. That purifies our character. We go back true historically, not historically, but true historically, spiritually, as well as culturally and so forth, back to our origin with the Supreme Being, the Great Mother, Great Father, Supreme Being, and so forth, our clans, coming into the world, learning about our ancestral culture and recounting our ancestral culture and trustery and so forth, from ancient Khanit and Kamit to Western, Central, and South Afuraka, Afuraitkait, into North America, are waging war and establishing independent maroon settlements and independent nations and so forth, fighting against the White Town Spring and getting to the point where we are now, where we're on the verge of reestablishing independent Black town settlements and so forth, and moving back into independence. We need to go through that Sankofa process from our origin in creation all the way to the point where we are now, so we can purify our character, see where we are in that process, and get back to normal. That's just a short, explanation of those, but those 7 proverbs govern the 7 days of the week. So when we engage in ritual process, the particular day of the week that we're engaged For example, Saturday is Memenida, that is September 17th. This year, September 17th happens to land on the Saturday of Memenida. That's the first day of our 7-day observance. Sometimes the first day is on a Benada Tuesday. Sometimes the first day of the observance, 17th, will land on a Wednesday or a Thursday or whatever. But this year, the first day of the observance is September 17th, and it's a Memenida Saturday. So therefore, the mbe, or the proverb that we focus on, is Sankofajira Subain Afurakapo Afuraitkait. The process of Sankofa purifies the character of Afurakani Afuraitkait people. When you return, go and grasp and so forth, then you begin to purify your character and get yourself back in alignment with what your function in the world is. So every day of the week, we engage the ritual process. As sunset is the beginning of ritual process, and we go to the shrine and so forth. We invoke the Yabosom, we evoke the Nananomsom, we go over the ebe, or the proverb of the day and so forth. We engage in ritual practice and so forth. And then we, whether it's drumming or meditation or whatever ritual process we engage in, and then we discuss that principle amongst those who are with us. And if we're doing it alone in our homes and so forth, we focus on that principle as well, and the divinity that governs that principle. So let me switch up. Well, first of all, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. Just a couple more things I want to touch on, and we can send you some of these links. Okay, so these are Akan Adinkra symbols. And Adinkra symbols are, many of them you find in the medutu and ancient Kemet and so forth. We continue to use them. Each one has its own name. Its form is related to its divine function. Adinkra symbols in Akan tradition are similar to veves in Vodun, where they are geometric patterns that are drawn or structured, and they are magnetizing forces for the Abosom and Nsamafo to come down, and each Adinkra symbol carries a different energy complex and so forth. You'll even find that, for example, the Sankofa Adinkra symbol is found within the Veve for Erzuli in Vodun and so forth, which is Hedheru in Vodun and so forth. But they're not just symbols with proverbs. They are symbols with proverbs, but they are shrines in miniature. They are, because of their structure, they magnetize specific Abosum who carry the same energy complex, and they stimulate that within us. So we use these specific, Adinkra symbols on clothes, on shrines, different ways and so forth. We're utilizing them to invoke the Abosum and Nsamafo. There are hundreds of Adinkra symbols. They have different proverbs, names of proverbs. Looking at them is like a dictionary and so forth. One thing that the Nsamafo showed us, we talk about their shrines in miniature, and they carry a specific energy complex. So the geometric patterns resonate when divine life force energy is projected into that specific geometric pattern. It generates a certain collection of vibrations based on its form, and that certain collection of vibrations is in alignment with a specific divinity that has that same collection of sound vibrations or energetic vibrations and so forth. They showed us the comparison, for example, between cymatics and the Adinkra symbols, which simply confirms what the Nsamafo told us about this, over 20 years ago. Cymatics, what this is these are electronic, computer digital images. So when a certain note is played on a piano, different notes are simply different rates of vibration. So you have low notes with certain vibrations and high notes with the faster vibrations, which make notes higher and so forth. If a certain note is played, a certain collection of sound vibrations emanate. But if that is projected into water, a certain geometric pattern will form. And they simply took a digital photo of the specific pattern that emerges, specific geometric pattern when different notes or collections of sound vibrations are played, captured by water. So you see here, D1, this is a geometric pattern that manifests. E1, this is the geometric pattern that manifests in the water. They captured it on film. F1, G, C, and so forth. And as you can see, the internal structure of each geometric pattern, as you can see here, matches the Adinkra symbol. So you see the internal structure of D1 here. You have the Adinkra symbol here. You have the internal structure of E1. This is the Onyame Dwira, Adinkra symbol, and so forth. You have the internal structure of F1 with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dual structures and so forth. And then you have the Anansi Ntontine symbol here. You have the internal structure of F1. You have the Adinkra symbol here. And you'll see the same all the way across the board. Each one of the internal structures of these energetic signatures are represented by Adinkra. So when we had the Adinkra symbols, the movement of the abosom, their energy through space, generates a specific pattern. Just like, you have snowflakes, the energy manifests, they crystallize in a geometric form and so forth. If you have certain sound vibrations, they will create, or just like if you throw a stone in water, the ripples will manifest at an even, structure from the center point and so forth. If a frog is sitting in water and they begin to, make their sounds, their vocal sounds and so forth, the water will vibrate at a specific rate and manifest a certain pattern and so forth, the geometric pattern that's symmetrical and so forth. Make these sounds, you see that in the water and so forth. When the forces in nature move through space, they generate a specific geometric pattern. This is why certain geometric forms are associated with deities. Just like when certain sound vibrations move through space, they generate colors, geometric forms, sounds, and so forth. There are certain colors associated with deities, certain geometric patterns associated with deities, certain sound vibrations associated with divinities, because when that energy moves through space, it generates form, sound, color. So every Adinkra symbol is an energetic signature of major abosom. And the reason we brought that out is because this particular Ohini Eniwa, as well as the Sun Sum and our Pra, these symbols are associated with our cosmological structure. People know about the Bakongo de Kenga symbol. In reality, the Yoruba Okonifa tray, when it's divided up into 4 quadrants, reflects that as well. The circular zodiac from the temple of Dendera that we will see when we visit Kemet and so forth is that original circular form and so forth that has the divinities all around it and so forth. In Akan, the Okra symbol, the symbol for the soul, is a 4-fold structure. And in that 4-fold structure, you will see diagonally the symbol for the Sun Sum or the spirit, and it's combined in this symbol. And we go into a little bit of detail about that, but the reason why we show that is because we have, in the Akan tradition in North America, which is called the Hoodoo tradition. Hoodoo comes from the Akan term umdu, which means medicine from roots and trees and plant life, and also means become heavy with the spirit. And we have, kaolin powder, red ochre, or yellow ochre, or charcoal, and so forth. It's in alignment with this sacred cycle. Salt and red pepper and sulfur and black pepper and so forth. We use themes and root work and so forth, connected to the 4 sons of Heru. And then we also have, second, let me make sure you all can see that part. Okay, so we were showing that breakdown is associated with medicine and so forth. That's one aspect of it. This is the soul disc worn on the soul washer of the sovereign and so forth. The same Adinkra symbols. It's just a golden version of these Adinkra symbols and so forth. And these are different variations of that. When we look at the structure, the white lymph in the body, the red blood, the yellow plasma, the black melanin, and so forth, associated with these sacred colors in Akan culture. The Bakongo have similar colors. There's a slight difference with the Akan and so forth. But the reason why that's important, and we will give you the link so you can look at this in detail. You can read it on your own. In our book, Odwira and Afashe, and this is a free book download. We have an Odwira conference in June around the solstice, the nation building conference, nationism conference, and so forth. We gave out a journal for the first 3 years, and in the back of the journal, final part of the journal, we're talking about this sacred circle and the 4 positions of the sun, sunrise, noon, sunset, midnight, and so forth, but also the spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox, winter solstice, and so forth, but how that affects every aspect of life. Per Ankhnut, the essential structure of the house of life. We give some cosmological background. That's Amen and Aminet once again. We show the relationship between the Akan tradition and the structure that we utilize, the Okra that governs the soul, and that same cosmological diagram, that cosmogram. We show how the Yoruba have it in their own way as well. We have it in ancient Kemet and so forth. But the reason why we go through that is we talk about the life cycle. And when you look at the life cycle from seeding and germinating and rooting and sprouting and flowering and harvesting and seeding again, we associate that with the cycle of life. And we have the seeding, embedding, germination, rooting, sprouting, flowering, going around that cycle. So each one of the points on the circle of life is not only the movement of the sun around, sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight and going back, or the spring equinox, summer solstice, fall equinox, winter solstice, but it also has to do with the seeding or embedding. You come in contact with an individual, you engage someone, an event, and so forth, or circumstance that is seeded in your consciousness. Then you have thoughts that are reflecting, what you just experienced, and they begin to root themselves in your consciousness. And then the first sprouting from what just happened is your emotional reaction. You either have fear or exhilaration or, contemplation and so forth. You have an energetic reaction to what you just experienced and what took root inside of you. And you have an emotional or energetic response. And then you have a full flowering of that, which is the actual behavior you engage in, rooted in that energetic response. That's the flowering of your, that activity. And then the final piece is the harvesting of the results of your actions. So you're seeded, it germinates and roots within you, you sprout, you have an energetic reaction, then you engage in physical acts to engage whatever issue it is, and then you harvest the results of your behavior, and then you start new seed formation. You start the cycle all over. This is a 20+ page, document, and you can read that entire document in detail. But we've also used it as the Afura whole life interventions therapeutic model. But the key is sunrise is also like the spring equinox. Summer solstice, the high point, the red circle, and so forth. Also high noon during the day. Sunset, that's the sun setting and going to the evening point, 6 p.m. and so forth. And when the sun sets, and goes underground, quote unquote, that's akin to a seed being planted in the ground. That is conception. That's the evening point, the end of the warm cycle, the beginning of the cool cycle. That's the end of the warm cycle of the year, the end of summer, and the beginning of fall. This is why we start our year at the seeding point when the sun sets and penetrates the earth. When we harvest everything, we have the harvest festival, oh-jee, end of the year, September and so forth, celebration within this time to purify. We plant the seeds and the conception takes place. Then we go down into the winter solstice, the darkness, the coolness, germination, things are rooting and so forth. That's like midnight, but also December 20th and so forth, the shortest day of the year. But then months later, things begin to sprout and break through the surface of the, of the earth and so forth. That's springtime, but it's also like the sun rising in the morning, it breaks through the surface, on the horizon, and things begin to be illuminated. What was going on underground begins to manifest. So we're in that, the March cycle, the spring equinox and so forth. And then you get to the summer solstice when things are fully hot, fully flowering. Behaviorally, you're fully manifesting your actions and so forth. And then sunset, once again, the fall, end of the warm cycle, beginning of the new cycle. We start at the conception time, that's September. That's the New Year's cycle. We purify ourselves from what happened in the previous cycle, from the harvesting and so forth. We purify ourselves, and then we go underground and so forth. We begin to build, develop, establish new businesses and relationships and purify ourselves, and we start germinating and rooting and so forth. And then we get to that winter cycle and so forth, and things are rooted and germinated, and then things begin to move up. So by the time we get into the spring cycle, during the Apo observance that we have in March, begin to manifest the things that we seeded and germinated and rooted in the fall and the winter. But this is why we start here in September. And so that particular article, I'll put the link in the chat room right now. That's inside of our journal. So you can download that for free. That's at the end of the journal and so forth. So those are some of the things we wanted to touch on. So basically, we just wanted to give that cosmological background. So we, and you can feel the energy, things are beginning to slow down, things are getting cooler, of course, in North America, leaves are going to be falling off trees, turning brown and so forth. There's a stark shift between the summer and the fall and so forth. We know there's a new season coming, birds are flying south for the winter and so forth. So things are shifting. We've taken advantage of that shift in energy that moves from the warm cycle or hot cycle to the cool cycle, and we become internalized. We purify ourselves at this point so we can go into that new conception phase, clean and focused and clear, so we can start off our conception phase in a purified fashion. And that's why it's oh-jee, purification. So each day of the week is associated with the proverb or the mbe, the sacred teaching of that day. So we start at sunset because that's the evening point. Sunset, go to the ancestral shrine, invoke the abosom, evoke the Nananomsom through ritual practice and so forth. And then we, whether we do it ourselves, contemplate ourselves, or, with people who are connected to us. So say, for example, let's see if we have. So we have, just like you have 7 days of the weekend, different proverbs associated with that day, different energy complexes. There are also 7 major gateways to the ancestral realm through ritual. So for example, ritual song is a cool gateway to the spirit realm. People sing, the sound vibration propels the spirit to the spirit realm. Ritual dance is a more fiery way where people dance and they spin and they explode into the spirit, going to the spirit realm, and spirit possession takes place, or the person's spirit travels and so forth. Meditation is another cool way, a cool gateway to the spirit realm and so forth. Ritual prayer is kind of an earthy way to the spirit realm and so forth. So ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual movement, there are different energetic gateways to the spirit realm. So on one day, Minida, that's associated with Amen Men, the mummified one. Susunho, or meditation, is the gateway to the spirit realm. So we'll engage in meditation on that particular day. And then we'll go over the principle on the day of Awukuda, Wednesday, and so forth. He's the communicator. So ritual prayer, ritual chant is the gateway that propels the spirit to the spirit realm. So the ritual invocation that day will be ritual prayer and so forth. Other day would be ritual song, ritual movement. So depending on the different day of the week, there's a specific ritual gateway that we use to communicate with the Aakhuamuman and Samako during this 7-day practice. So we can send out a short little chart regarding that. So you can, if you're not on our email list, if you haven't received any emails from us, that means you're not on the email list. If you're not, you can just email us and I'll put you on the list. We can send you that little chart out. But from September 17th to September 23rd, all it is basically you purify yourself, going to the shrine at sunset, invoking and evoking the Aakhuamuman and Samako. One day it may be meditation, one day ritual chant, one day ritual movement and so forth, whatever it is. And then once you make your self open to the Aakhuamuman and Samako, then you're focused on that principle, that mbe, that sacred wisdom teaching of the day, to incorporate that and purify that and reinstall that within your spirit body. And of course, they're going to communicate things about how that was, operant throughout the course of this past year, and how you can put that principle into work in the coming year. And also other things will come as well. So each day of the week, we're doing a similar thing, but it's different proverb each day, ritual practice each day, but we're incorporating these sacred mbe, these proverbs, and that's the purificatory process. But if you have any questions in the chat room, just let me know. I know some people had asked for some links. It looks like some people provided some links. And if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask questions as well. And we will have this. We'll have this available. The entire live available. We'll upload it so you can access it and review it, or let somebody else check it out who wasn't able to check it out live. We'll do that as well. Okay. So just want to make sure we did. Okay, so we have a couple of things coming up. So of course that's coming up starting this Minida, this Saturday, first day of the observance. And even for those who are not Akan, of course you're Afuraitkait and so forth. So say someone found out they're not Akan, you're not part of the Hoodoo tradition in North America. Say you found out that your ancestresses and ancestors, and you as an ancestor or ancestress, you were a Yoruba person, you reincarnated through your blood circle, and you're that same Yoruba person. Just like the Akan tradition in North America is called Hoodoo, from the Akan term Undu. And we continued Akan ancestry religion as the hoodoo man, hoodoo woman as the priest and priestess of Akan religion in North America. In Yoruba, the term juju means to cast energy and cast medicine and so forth. And that's the Yoruba tradition in North America. They continued it as juju. So the juju man or juju woman originally was the Yoruba man, Yoruba woman in the United States. The hoodoo man or hoodoo woman, we were saying, I'm Akan. The voodoo man and voodoo woman, those are the Ewe and Bon people. The Wanga man and Wanga woman, those were the Ovambo people. The, Geechee man, Geechee woman, those are Kisi man from the Gola and Kisi people in Sierra Leone and so forth, or the Gullah and Geechee people here in North America and so forth. So we maintained our ethnic groups. When we look at our different traditions and the terminology we use in North America, you will see that it comes specifically from the specific ethnic group that we are incarnate of. So if you're not Akan and you find out that, you know that you're Yoruba and your people were Juju people and so forth, the Yoruba people have a 5-day sacred week and so forth. You could still practice, establish a 5-day New Year observance. We could still end up on September 23rd, but you can do it that way. The Igbo people have a 4-day sacred week, market week, and so forth. You could establish your own Igbo tradition if you find out that's your ancestry and so forth. We can all end up on September 23rd as the New Year's Day for Afuraitkait people in North America, but you can have your own approach based on your specific ethnic group on how to formulate, your New Year observance. It's good to have that starting point at September 23rd, the equinox, because, for example, on the continent, it's not a stark difference between, June and September per se, or September and December and so forth. The temperatures are a little bit different. Here, of course, in North America, in June, it can be 100 degrees. In December, if you live in somewhere, Chicago, it could be 10, 20 degrees below zero. Snow is everywhere. There's a stark difference. There's a stark difference between the shift in seasons. From summer to fall, when it's 100 degrees outside in June, and then there's, it's 55 degrees in the fall, and all the leaves are turning brown and falling off the trees and so forth. There's a major shift in energy, and we can experience that shift even if we're not engaged in something spiritual. Just the fact that the temperatures and the way nature is manifesting, there's a market shift in energy, and we take advantage of that shift, that time for conception and going into the cool phase and incorporating that kind of energy and so forth. So it makes sense for Black people in North America to pay attention and take advantage of the shift in energy from the movement from one equinox to the solstice, to the next equinox, to the next solstice, and so forth. That is important for us, and we pattern our lives around that kind of cycle. So that's what's coming up. Now, we have a couple of other things coming up. Actually, in 2 weeks, let me just pull this up real quick. On the September 25th, let's see. So we're starting off our new cycle. The 23rd is the New Year's Day, which is Feed Out Friday. The 25th is the first Sunday or Awusida of our new year. And we're starting our 13-week Oberimasem Afurakani manhood course once again. So that 13-week cycle or 91-day cycle from September 25th to December 25th, from right after the autumn equinox to right after the December, winter solstice and so forth, that quadrant, we're having our 13-week manhood course. And we're going through our book, Oberima Afurakani Manhood, which is this book, and the book is a free download, of course. We're also going through our Patasa Satem curriculum. And then we're going to go through 14 of our other books that we have published that are germane to the piece. So there are 14 sessions within that 13-week cycle. there are 14 Sundays of Wusida within that 13-week cycle. So each, one of those 14 sessions, we'll be going through one of those 14 books and so forth, in addition to the manhood book, which is a 7-module, 7-section book in the Vatasasatem curriculum. So that's what we're doing. So if you would like to sign up for the manhood course, we still have some spaces available. It's 91 days. It's $1 a day, $91. You can pay $30 and $30 installments if you want. We have that option on the page. Or you can pay the full registration fee. But the books, all 16 books, the 2 Oberima and Vatasasatem, as well as the additional 14 books, are free downloads. The ebook versions are free, so you can download those for free and study those. We'll be going through all of them. And like we posted this particular flyer within on our page. For the men, so this deity right here is the male deity Ma'a. He's the male divinity of law, divine balance and truth and so forth. He is the counterpart of Ma'a. I took this picture in the tomb when we were visiting Kamit, in the tomb of Ramesu VI, so-called Ramses VI. That is Ma'a. He's in the 11th hour of the Duat, the 11th hour of the night and so forth. But you can find the deity Ma'a from the earliest periods of Kamit all the way through the late period. People, because white people don't focus on that divinity, then a lot of our people don't focus on that. They don't even know he exists. But Ma'at is the male force of divine law and balancing creation. Ma'a, she's the female force, and Ma'a is the male force of divine law and balance. Ma'a and Ma'at are the male and female forces that regulate balance in creation. Without them, there is no balance in creation. They balance out your organs, they balance out the forces in nature and so forth. So women, when you're trying to align yourself and rebalance yourself, even the 2 ear canals leading to the vestibular system, which is your center of balance in the head region and so forth, those 2 ear canals are the Usek Ma'ati, the sacred halls of Ma'at, as talked about in the text and so forth, that lead to the center or shrine of balance, the vestibular system. When you're trying to align yourself, just like physically, if you fall over and then you send that energy to the, vestibular system, the balancing point in the body, to rebalance yourself. Well, spiritually, you send your energy to that sacred shrine in the head region to regain spiritual and emotional balance. And that is through the ritual invocation of Ma'at, primarily for women. For men, emotional and mental and spiritual balance is dependent on our ritual invocation of the deity Ma'a. He is the male masculine force that regulates balance in creation, including within us. If we don't even know he exists, and we're trying to gain emotional balance, mental balance, spiritual balance, and so forth, and we don't even know this force in creation exists, and we don't instinctively align ourselves with the force that actually regulates balance in creation. You have individuals who are quote unquote spiritual or intellectual or scholarly or doing whatever they're doing, but then they manifest all forms, all kinds of mental and emotional imbalance. You see priests and priestesses, or for example, on the male side, priests or lecturers or teachers or quote unquote gurus or people talking about nation building and all these different things, and they have a lot of information, but they manifest emotional, mental, and spiritual imbalance. And it shows up in their relationships with women or children or the community or whatever it is, or, promiscuity or different kinds of addictions and, all kinds of nonsense. They don't even know the male force exists. He exists in the Yoruba tradition as Edun. He exists in the Akan tradition as Abam, the divinity, the Abosom Abam and so forth, who governs twins. He manifests in the Yoruba tradition as the male Ibeji, then you have the female Ibeji and so forth, the polar balance forces in creation. Every tradition knows who the male force of divine balance is and the female force of divine balance. But since we've been misinformed, even African-centered individuals going back and forth to Kemet, they will talk about Ma'at all day long, but they don't even know Ma'a exists. And therefore, when they manifest in balance and people manifest in balance, males, there's a reason for that. If you're not invoking the force of divine balance as a male, the male force, then you're not going to be in balance. If you don't do it deliberately or instinctively, you're going to manifest chronic imbalance. And that's key to, manhood. So we talk about Black men are not in need of healing. We are in need of awakening. When we awaken to reality and get the right principles within us and we can operate within us, we don't need to follow somebody or join some organization and so forth. Once we get the proper information and incorporate that, then we can move forward independently and reestablish ourselves. And then we can collaborate with other men who have reestablished and purified themselves as well and work in collaboration as opposed to simply blindly following somebody. That's not in our nature. So that's coming up. And it's 1 week, it's 13 weeks, but it's every Awusidah Sunday, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and so forth. That's a session once a week and so forth. We're going through this information. And then the other two events that are coming up our Happy Merit Retreat, where we go to Edisto Island, one of the Gullah Islands, one of the Gullah Sea Islands, off the coast of South Carolina. That is coming up. We do that every February. And it's a cultural and ritual retreat and so forth. So we posted the video about that. If you didn't see the video, we posted that recently, just the other day and so forth. All the details are there. You'll see that the flyer is posted on the website, the Happy Merit website. We talk about what the prerequisites are and everything else. We have at least about 10 or 12 people who've already signed up. So we have about 8 spaces left open for that, but that's coming up. And then the other two things, our trip to Kamit, our annual trip to Kamit in May. And that's our Afuraitkait. We just came back a couple of months ago. We went in May from May 24th to June 1st this past spring, and we're going back May 23rd through May 31st. 12 cities in Kamit, from northern Kamit all the way to Nubia and so forth, Khanit, Nubia and so forth. All the details are there. So if you would like to reserve your spot for that, you can deposit down and reserve your spot. That's coming up in May. So that's, even though it seems like it's far off, it's still coming up kind of quickly. So if you would like to attend that, you can attend that. We do have a few more spaces for that. And hold on one second, just one more thing. And this November, coming up November 26th, we're having our first annual, here in Washington, D.C., our first annual Conjure Film Festival. We'll be premiering our new documentary on the Hoodoo tradition, Akan ancestral religion in North America. And then we're also accepting submissions from other filmmakers in the Conjure film genre, which is a film genre we're establishing. So those forms of ancestral religion we preserved in our blood circles in North America, like the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan, the Juju tradition, which is Yoruba, the Wanga tradition, which is Ovambo, the Voodoo tradition, which is Ebanfon, the Gangan tradition, which is Fang, and so forth. When we were forced over here, we continued our ancestral religious practices, and films based on those traditions will be the kinds of films that we screen. We won't screen films simply by somebody, practices Ifa tradition in Nigeria. They have a film about that. There are many film festivals for that. This is for people in North America, descended from those who preserved our ancestral religious practices in our blood circles in North America. And we preserve the Akan tradition. So it's not about an Akan priest from Ghana making a film and those films wouldn't be in our festival. It's about the Akan people who were forced into North America, maintained Akan ancestral religion for 300+ years as the Hoodoo tradition, and we talk about how we maintained our Akan ancestral religion. And the same with the Juju person who's the Yoruba person or the Wanga person and so forth. So those are the kind of films we're screening. We have, it's going to be at the Arc Theater, as you can see here in Washington, D.C. This is the theater, finite number of seats, so you can order your tickets now. That's just in a couple of months, so it's coming up kind of quick. So if you would like to attend, we have, the Kanche Films placed on the website, the details on the website and so forth. And we will be putting out information about our annual Hoodoo Mind Festival, which takes place in October. We'll have some information on that within about a week. But always in mid-October, we have the Hoodoo Mind Hoodoo Nation Festival. We usually have it in Washington, D.C. So we may have it in a different city this year, but we'll have information out about that within about a week. Okay. Okay, so now we also have an announcement. So we sent out an email to a small group of people. We're shifting. We're going to do the November. We had two trips. We had the trip in May and the trip in November for Kamit. The yearly trip is in May, but we added an additional trip in November because there were certain people who wanted to go in November and they didn't want to wait until May, so we had a special trip for November. About 9 of the people had to switch from that trip to the May trip because they weren't able to go. So that was a large percentage of the people. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, and we sent the email out to the remaining people who were for November. We're going to have to shift those people to May. If you want to go for May, we can do that. If you don't want to go on May, we can work that whole thing out. We can, whatever you want to do, we can do that. But we do have to shift it over to May so we can refund the people. It's only a few people left. If you can't make it in May, we can refund you for that. Most of the people we had to shift over because once those 8 people had to shift over all at the same time from November to May, then we only had a few people left over. And in November, it's very, the prices start going up in October, November. That's the big season in Kamit for travel. That's when most people are traveling and so forth because it's not as hot. So a smaller group, you would have to have, things in place earlier, but since most people had to shift over, there was one particular organization, there were 8 people in that organization, and they all had to shift their organization from November to May. So that took, most of the people who signed up for the trip, and then one other person had to shift also at the same time. So the small group of people who were left over for November, most of them said they would like to go in May anyway. So we shifted them over and they maintained the discount that they had with no problem. If you're not able to make May, if you want to go to a future trip, you can keep your discount or we can just refund the thing. Okay. And we're going to send another email out about that. Okay. I'm just checking chat real quick. Okay, so if you're not on the email list, send us an email so we can send you some updates and some of the information we talked about tonight. We can also send you the link once the broadcast is up so you can access it, so you can review it. And then some of the things that we talked about, we can send you so you have, some more detailed information. But it's basically, and you'll notice a difference when you commit to, that 7-day period from September 17th September 23rd, if you can do all 7 days or, some of the 7 days and so forth, after sunset, around sunset or after sunset, going into ritual at your ancestral shrine, whether you did it at your ancestral shrine or you did it outside, at a natural shrine in nature, at a tree or at a river and so forth, and you just engage that, you will notice you can take advantage of that shift in energy that's happening right now where the Earth Mother is becoming cool, becoming receptive. It's time for conception and contemplation and seeding and so forth, this is a great time for purification, ritual purification. So,
Hello.
yes.
Oh, could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, greetings. The question that I have a question, and my question is that I know you were saying that to be purified. So to be purified, you have to detox. Is that correct? And how long you have to detox to go on to the in a way to purify or fast?
Now, you said, do you have to detox? Do you have to fast? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I mean to purify and to I have been following you and a lot of other things, and I remember even calling saying that if you don't do true rituals, nothing is nothing if you don't do the true rituals.
Now, if you were talking about
And
in March, so in March around the equinox, on our page we have the Afuraitkait observance, a 13-day observance, and we were talking about a specific fast during that particular time leading up to the spring equinox. So that was during that period as far as that 7-day fast. But now during this, autumn equinox, one of the 7 days, and if you're not on the email list, email us. The email is kwesiakan@gmail.com. But if you're not on the list, email us, and we'll send you out some basic things about each day. One of the days we do fast. If you can fast, you can do that. And sometimes people, may have certain health issues, or even if it's a pregnant mother, you can't, fast and so forth. But the main thing for this time of the year is engaging the ritual process, taking a pause from whatever else you're doing at that time of the evening and so forth, and going into ritual to begin to recalibrate yourself. There's one of the days we do fast, but we don't fast the entire 7 days during the autumn equinox and so forth. That's not part of the practice that we do. It's not that you can't do that. That's not what we do. One of the days we do fast, but if you want to fast, of course you can do that. That's not part of this particular 7-day observance.
okay, so even though with the detoxing that you don't have to, like detox, clean yourself, from what you eat. And I know that when we eat certain things, it's not good. As far as like meat. And I've been trying to follow out to do things, but I've been in a lot of we have a lot of distractors, like, and every time I say I was gonna do this and do that and I'm ready, or when to set up, or when I can go and set and meditate,
Okay.
or get the bowl where you say where your okra you can set, and you take a bowl, and I remember you saying you speak. I think one of the prayer is for I think for your okra for the female version.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let me put it the way I was trying to say it, that I remember that it's a prayer that I think that you say that you can say, and you don't have to say the whole prayer. Well, when you want to set and meditate and for your choir.
Right. I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Part.
If you email me, I don't know if you don't have it, I can send it to you. I know which one you're talking about. It's talking about that's the Kumpai Bo ritual prayer, dealing with the cry and so forth. If you email
right,
me,
and you have to have a bowl.
Right, email me and I'll send it to you.
Okay, because I understand. So you have to have a glass bowl, and you set and you say what you're supposed to say, and then you take and you pour it over your head. Like, you have to have a clean space. Is that correct? Your space had to be clean.
Right, and that's so in one of the for example, one of the sessions in the Uncomb course, and let me just show people what you're talking about so they can they have an idea of what you're talking about.
Okay.
Pull it up on the page right quick.
Because I have been following, I have been listening, and I have even with the Obadiah time, I had did classes and everything. But I understand if you don't do the true ritual, it's all that is just it don't it's nothing.
Well, the main
You
thing
must
is
do the true ritual.
going into ritual practice with the right intention. Now it's just like exercise. Consistency is key.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody can work out one day and they get sore, then they wait 3 days and work out, and then wait 4 days and work out, and wait another day, and a year later, if they stay on that track, their body isn't going to look any different a year later than it did when they first worked out, even though they've been quote unquote working out for a year. But if they're consistent and focused on moving forward, they're working out 3 to 4 times a week and progressing, then every week there's going to be improvement because there's consistency. And it's the same thing with regard to going to the ancestral shrine. Your receptivity will increase just by virtue of the fact that you're consistent and you have that pure focus that you are going to be receptive. You're seeking to align with the divinity that governs your head and your Nananomsom, and the consistency begins to develop that receptivity and it begins to expand. So, and then the things that are, just like with diet or exercise and so forth, things that weight begins to, dissipate, toxins, if you transform your diet consistently over time and so forth. It's not like a dramatic switch in diet, but you begin to take things away consistently over time and so forth that are not good for your system, and put, plant-based things in your system and so forth. You'll see that your health is improving consistently, day by day by day. But just to show people what you're kind of talking about so they can be up to speed. So this is our Aakhuamuman page where our online courses are. We have 34 online courses. All of them are archived now. So the 6-week courses are $15. The 4-week courses are $10. The books that we base them on, our 31 books, are free downloads. So one of those courses that includes some of the information that she's addressing is, one of the is this course right here, the Unkom course. That's one of them.
And I think I have that. Okay, I think I have that. I did. I have to probably go into my email, the Chrome, so that I do have, and I did do the ad, which I'm doing that now. The
Okay.
AV ad, the heart. So I'm listening to that now. So,
Okay.
So in all, what did you do when you be like a lot of distraction, distraction, or you shouldn't do this, or don't do that, So that's more like being compromised. When someone tells you that you shouldn't do, or they don't agree with what you doing, from even learning the I know certain things I want to stop eating because it's a low vibration. I want to raise my vibration. And
now, for example, if it's there are a couple of things. If sometimes people are living in a space where you may not be in 100% control, and people don't want you doing certain things in their space. In that case, you may need to do it somewhere else. You can always do things outside, by a tree, by a river, in a sacred space like that if you need to, or you can do something portable in your home, in your space, part of the home that you have control over. That's one thing. But if it's just people don't like what you're doing, then that's a different thing. You have control over yourself. So when we talk about this in calm course, for people who are unaware, it's a 4-week course. We said 4 elemental rituals of spirit communication. So libation is one of them. Ancestral shrines is another one. Meditation is one of them. And spiritual head cleansing is what the sister was talking about. These are 4 basic ritual practices that are practiced by all Afuraitkait and Afuraitkait people. They're associated with the 4 elements, like the libation with water and ancestral shrine with, the, earth and meditation, dealing with, breath and spiritual head cleansing and so forth with that fire, purification, fire and so forth. And one of them, the OBRADWIRA, is talking about cleansing your spiritual head, just like you physically wash your head, wash your body and remove the debris. Spiritually, we cleanse the head to remove all these negative projections from other individuals, as well as things that we, conditionings that we have drummed up within ourselves. So that are, maladaptive, that we've been conditioned with since childhood or adulthood or a combination thereof. Through the ritual process, we can remove that and remain, get back focused. Just like physically fasting, purging out things out of your system so you can start off, on a clean slate. We purge out things that have been attaching themselves to us ritually, so we can get rid of that spiritual debris so we can move forward on a clean slate. So the OBRADWIRA session, or the soul spiritual head cleansing session in the Nkom course, is what one of the course sisters talking about. Now, with regard to diet and detoxing, one of the sisters in our film, the first film that we produced, we're going to show an image of that. In fact, 2 of them, but.
Okay, so it is the only thing, the one thing is that my spouse, which is my husband, he disagreed everything that I'm doing. So that's why I asked the question that I asked,
Okay.
when you want your own space, and it's always, when you start off with something, then something distracts you with that. So it's always, no, you don't need to do this. You're not supposed to listen to anyone else. You're supposed to listen to your husband. So I'm right now into that mode. But
Okay.
yet I still seek out that what I need to seek out, because I've been drawn to do just to listen. Hopefully, I say it's time for me to set up and to begin to meditate.
Okay.
And with my acquire. So that's why I was asking.
Okay. So
You basically asking all the questions. I appreciate it. Yet I say I appreciate everything.
Oh, no problem. And I would just say this is the first film that we produced, and people can access that on the website. Mama Mawusi Ashakir is one of the healerists, and the film is talking about our forms of divination that we preserve in our blood circles. So all 5 of us are in the film. We actually, won an award for it. But Mama Mawusi deals with, natural health, and she certifies people in naturopathic medicines and so forth. But they have, detox programs and everything dealing with diet and so forth. You can connect with Mama Mawusi Ashakir. Of course, she's on my Instagram page and, Facebook. We're friends on Facebook and so forth. Her information is out there. So if you need a connection with her, I can send you that, as well as Mukajara Nebehet. She deals with health and healing. She's the one who founded Raseki Kemetic Reiki. So she deals with healing and has trained a number of individuals with regard to ancestral healing and so forth. That's dealing with detoxing as well as spiritual healing as well. So both of them deal with medicine ritually as well as emotionally and physically and so forth, and diet and all of that. So Mama Mawusi as well as Mukajara, you can get detailed information and programs for detoxing physically, but also spiritually. Mama Mawusi and her husband, they've been married for 30 years. They can also, provide some insight with regard to marriage and the issues with regard to marriage and so forth, so you can connect with them on that. When it comes to those things, you want to, relationship issues, and those things always, arise if one person in a relationship is moving towards something spiritual, and the other person may not be on that yet. So you want to get that kind of guidance from people who have actually been successful. They've been married for over 30 years and they have a successful union. You want to get that kind of direction from people who have a proven track record. There are people who, you know, give good advice and everything, but you also have people out here who are relationship gurus and they've never been married and have failed relationships. So people who have a proven track record of over a generation of being culturally grounded and married and brought children into the world and raised children in the culture, and their children are married as well and they're raising children in the culture, they have a proven track record. So you want to get that kind of, you know, insight from somebody like that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, now so. Okay. Okay, so. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and end it now. We've gone over time, of course, but we just wanted to give that cosmological foundation for why we, you know, have the New Year observance at this particular time of the year within this particular cycle, and certain things that can be done to, you know, take advantage of this shift in energy. And you'll notice when you engage the process over the course of, you know, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, or however many days you can engage that process, you'll notice that you're able to tap into that energy of this shift and utilize it to your best advantage. So once again, if you're not on the email list, if you have not been receiving emails from us, send us an email, and then, you know, we'll put you on the list and we'll send that information out to you. So, yet I say we thank everybody for tuning in, and we will meet again. That's it.